Anything fun happened? I had a really good weekend, Memorial Day weekend. We had a barbecue. All my friends came over. My parents came over. My buddy Miguel Blatt, I hadn't seen him in a long time. He came and surprised me over from Miami with his family.
Good old Miguel.
Good old Miguel. Yeah, we cooked out.
I think Miguel's are usually good people.
Every Miguel I've met, I've liked.
Okay.
Also, every Canadian I've met, I've liked too.
There's probably a correlation.
Definitely.
Is Miguel Canadian?
No, he's Venezuelan. Welcome to the Move with Motus Podcast. My name is Dr. Christopher Ellis, and joining me is personal trainer John Williams. We are the owners of Motus Personal Training and Physiotherapy. Together, we will discuss any topic you can think of when it comes to training and rehab. From the carnivore diet to hip impingement, you can be sure that all your questions will be answered. Enjoy this week's episode. So what do you got for me today, John?
So, one of my clients, I'm shutting down my training business.
So I hear.
It's very sad.
Very sad.
I'm actually shutting it down because Chris is such a good trainer, and he stole so much of my spotlight that I just didn't want to do it anymore.
I'm not a trainer.
Yeah, same thing. But so I'm shutting down my training business, and I have a client who travels to the East Coast. We live in Florida. We're in Naples. They go to the East Coast of Florida a lot for work. So he decided one day a week he was going to also get a trainer over there because he spends a few days of the week over there. And so he does an evaluation with him today with the trainer. My client calls me. He said, "Hey, man," and I've been working with this guy for a year. He said, "Hey, man, I just worked with this trainer. I'm going to work with them one day a week over there for 30 minutes, which I think 30-minute sessions, complete waste of time. If your trainer's offering 30-minute sessions, just don't do them at all. If they have hours, do hours. If they have hour and a half, even better." But yeah, he said, "I'm going to do 30-minute sessions, and I want you to talk to him to sort of like let him know the things we've been working on for the past year, because you probably know me better than anybody else does." Mm-hmm. I was like, "Yeah, that sounds fine." I was like, "Well, give me a rundown of what you did with him." And I won't say it here, but he gave me the rundown. And, obviously I'm moving on from this, so I just decided not to discourage him. Like, okay, you have another trainer, that's good. Like, you'll be working out more. I will argue that it is better than nothing. Even working with a trainer that I don't necessarily think is all that knowledgeable. And so I realized that the trainer's not going to be all that knowledgeable, and I'm honestly having, like, this client has some pretty significant issues. He's got a really bad knee that needs some serious attention, and it definitely does have some concerns, but unfortunately it's just not my place at this point. He's got the guy. He's going to work with him. The best I can do is just help this other trainer to the best of my abilities to give this client a good result. So later in the day, the trainer calls me and says, "Hey, you work with this guy. Like, he wanted me to talk to you to sort of just get an idea of what's going on." I was like, "Yeah, well, just before we talk about, what I think I know, why don't you tell me like what you did in the eval today and what your thoughts are?" And so in the eval, this is the first.
You're like interviewing this guy.
I didn't want to just give him my opinions without hearing his opinions first.
You straight up tested him.
But it was a little bit of a test. And I tried to do it as subtly as possible so he didn't feel bad.
All right.
And he definitely didn't catch on to what I was doing.
Yeah.
But so, I asked him, like, what'd you do in the eval? Like, just let me know what you think, and then I'll tell you what I know. So he tells me that he did, like a trap bar RDL, like just with no weight. He was doing some crunches. He did like a couple planks. He did some like upright rows, stuff like that. He's like, "Yeah, we did a little bit of cardio too. It just didn't really go all that hard, just to sort of see where he's at." Mm-hmm. I'm like, "All right, well, like, what do you think?" Like that's what he said. He just kind of like told me the things that he did, and it was like, that's sort of what we did. And I was like, "Okay, well, what do you think? Like, what do you think's good? What do you think's bad?" And he was like, and then he just ran through the things that he did again. Yeah. And again, this was like a 30-minute eval. I'm like, okay, well, clearly he wasn't like trying to learn anything from this eval.
Did he do an assessment?
No, there was no. That was the eval, quote unquote. Oh. Was just a whole bunch of
a training session,
light exercises.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, I'm like, well, what's the point of doing a quote unquote eval? Because even he sold it to the guy as an eval. Like my client said that, yeah, you did an eval on me today.
So this wasn't like a movement assessment. It was like, let's do some crunches, RDLs, cardio, and see how you do.
Yep. And that was it.
Yeah.
And my ask to all you guys, because again, like, and I had to explain to him the things I think are wrong, and the things I think he should be working on, and the movements that I think he should be working on. I just use some very common terminology like hip abduction and external rotation. I have a feeling he might not even know what those are. And I'm not even trying to be rude, just based on the information that he was giving me. My ask to all of you as listeners of this is, if you go to work with a trainer and they take you through an eval process that just kind of feels like a light workout, and it doesn't feel like they're actually looking at anything specific, they're not taking any videos of anything, they're not taking you through any tests that feel like, oh, he's testing like my range of motion, he's testing how I move, don't work with that guy.
Yeah, you know, when I was a personal trainer, I'm talking like 15 years ago, and tell me if I'm wrong, I was surprised that there was like no real governing body. There was like all these different certifications, some harder than others, some purely online. It's like anybody can get certified, and it's not very hard. And you know, it just seems like there's definitely some great ones. Like I was NASM certified. I thought NASM was good, but for example, I got my wife certified. I just like signed her up for some free course online and took the test for her, and within a half hour she was a certified trainer. I was just doing it as a test, and I was like, she didn't learn a thing. Yeah,
and there is no real governing body that's very good. There's National Strength Conditioning Association. I can say this now that I'm not going to be a trainer. There's National Academy of Sports Medicine. Those are probably the two best ones. But even their certifications for personal trainers, really easy to pass. And at the same time, they don't actually teach you any valuable skills. Mm-hmm. They just teach you some of like like when you go to school and you learn like, calculus. It's like they'll teach you the calculus, even though the calculus doesn't actually apply to like everyday mathematics,
right,
like accounting, so on and so forth. You need to get really good at the fundamentals of biomechanics and understanding movement and program science, and then you can learn all the other little fluff stuff.
So does that happen really with continuing education in the personal training world? Or is there what, if someone was new to this, what certificate would you recommend to get certified through for personal training?
None of them.
None? I thought NASM was pretty good.
I think NASM, as far as a certified personal training certificate goes, is actually the best one.
Yep.
I think their book is the best for certified personal training. Mm-hmm. Just for personal training in general, I think it gives you a good overview of what to do for like strength conditioning athletes, but it really gives you a good understanding of what to do with general population individuals, which is most of your population who you're going to train. But if you look at their book and you just look at some of the things that they do in those exercises as like demonstration exercises and the pictures that they have, it's horrible. I mean, the people in those pictures, they probably can move, but they're butchering all of these different movements. So it's really, like I said, I can't really recommend anything firmly. You really need to find a very good mentor, somebody who knows a lot.
So your knowledge base, would you say it's from mostly continuing education, or is it more from your exercise science background, or both?
It's mostly from continuing ed. The base of what I got from school was, here's what muscles are, here's where they start, here's where they end.
And this is how you don't kill somebody.
And this is how you don't kill somebody. And then for me, after that, it was about how do all the pieces connect. Mm-hmm. Like you talked about how you really like relationships. Mm-hmm. I do too. Mm-hmm. And it was understanding all those relationships on a fundamental level.
Yep.
But I couldn't connect those dots, and nobody allowed me to connect. Well, nobody really taught me how to connect those dots in school. Mm-hmm. It was just like, here's this muscle, here's where it starts, here's where it ends, but how it relates to this one, how it relates to this joint, and what happens when this is too tight or too loose or too strong or too weak. Nobody gave me any sort of indication of what that's going to be. And then how do I test for that?
Yeah.
How do I test for the strength, the weakness, and the immobility?
Yeah. It gets even more confusing than that, too, because what I've come to realize, too, is you learn the by-the-book movements, like, shoulder flexion is, your bicep and your anterior delt, and you learn all the actions. But then, like, that's in your cardinal, in the sort of Leonardo neutral position.
In the Vitruvian man.
What is the bicep doing, or, when you're in a pitching position? Or, like, I've noticed that missing shoulder extension can sometimes be caused by a tight lat, which doesn't even really make sense. Mm-hmm. Because a lat does do extension. Usually what it does, the opposite is what it limits. But sometimes you just have a shortened muscle that's so crowded with fiber that it just rams into itself. So, the more you do this, the more you realize that there's rules that are just meant to be broken down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a baseline level of movement that everybody can understand that doesn't take that long to learn. But if you're not assessing people properly on it, if you're not testing people's movements, you'll never learn what to look for.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not doing things really slow, doing functional movement screens, doing mobility tests, and doing the basic fundamental movement patterns just to see what's happening, not to just like work somebody out,
Mm-hmm.
you'll never really get to the problems, and you'll never learn how to solve them.
What Con Ed courses would you recommend? Which ones like really influenced you?
I'll be honest, one of the best books I read, but it still has a lot of flaws, is I'm blanking on it now. It's the biomechanics book. It's a black book. You probably know what it is. I'm forgetting
Is
the
this
name.
a continuing education book, or is it
It's
like
just
just a textbook?
It's just a textbook, super common in PT. I didn't get it until after I graduated.
It's been a while since I've been out of school.
Oh man,
Kendall?
sounds familiar.
I don't know. Well, if you think of it, we'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah. But there's really one biomechanics book that I always go back to.
Mm-hmm.
I always literally, like, this is really all I do. I go back to my Atlas of Anatomy,
Mm-hmm.
and then that biomechanics book. I go to the Atlas just to like figure out where all the, like, that's my map. Like, that's where I know where all the muscles are,
Mm-hmm.
where all the bones are, and where all the joints are, and where they connect to each other. And then the biomechanics book teaches me the relationships.
Gotcha. Anything else? Any other certificates? You did mention FMS. Are you a fan of that?
Yeah, I am a fan of the FMS. I do it personally. I do think they have some rules in there that are kind of nonsense,
Mm-hmm.
but they're smart guys, and they definitely understand movement. So if you want to get your functional movement screen, I would recommend it, and think really deeply about what those tests are trying to tell you. They're not everything. You do have to do more tests on top of that, but it's a really good baseline. It's where I start with everybody in my eval, and think really, really deeply, like, when they do this in this position, in this movement, what is that telling me? And if your trainer's not looking for those things, they're not a good trainer.
Yeah, I took Mike Reinhold's course on the functional movement assessment, which I really loved. So that's good for physical therapists and personal trainers. And what he did was he took the FMS, like components of that, and I believe the SFMA. Is that the other one, right? He kind of put them together and put his own spin on it. And I like his approach too, because he's like, look, it's not necessarily bad if your knee caves in a little bit when you squat. It's just less than optimal. That's what you're going to try to correct. But doesn't it's not such a strickler and saying, you're on your back a little bit. It's like, that's okay until it's not okay.
Yes.
And if it's not okay, you're having pain, let's correct that.
Yeah, and there's things you have to consider. Obviously, are they having pain? If they're having pain, then you have to immediately stop everything. But if you have some, like I had a kid yesterday, he was doing some pretty heavy weight. He was like 275, but it's not max load. He's 240 pounds, 6'5". Like he's okay. He had some slight curvature of the spine during the last couple reps of the deadlift. I didn't stop him. It wasn't like, oh God,
right.
Like, you have to understand, but you have to also have an eye for that sort of stuff. Like, how much is too much? How much load is too much? And when is this going to become a problem? Yep. Those things take a lot of time to develop, but really seeing movement well, I think, takes less time than people make it out to be. But some people never learn movement because they're never looking for it.
Yeah. I've also come to realize that, sort of a movement compensation or a little bit of an error, I think to me it's more about performance than it is about pain. It can definitely cause pain. But I think you can lose output if you're, say, for example, your knee's caving in, or maybe your back's rounding. You're not, I don't think it's necessarily bad. You're just going to lose performance.
Yeah, you can live with a lot of compensation at higher levels that don't affect you on the day to day. Like, as an example, I feel really good most days, but today I was doing some single leg jumps, and I was watching a guy on Instagram. He was a speed skater. An Olympic speed skater, and he had just these ginormous quads, just super strong, and he was doing these jumps, and he was jumping like 1.5 feet in the air on one leg, landing on the other leg, and just no errors at all. Knees track perfectly straight, perfect balance, doesn't bobble at all. I'm like, oh my God, I can't do that. So I was doing some today, And it's like, especially on my right leg that's a little weaker, like the knee would collapse in a little bit, and I'd lose some balance. Like,
Which ankle is the banged up one? It's your right ankle, isn't it?
Yeah, let's not talk about it too much more. But it's like in everyday life, that's not going to affect me. But when I go to do a single leg jump and try to get some height on it and then try to land smooth and soft, yeah, those compensations pop up.
Yeah. I think we crushed it.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to talk about?
What about you? Any certifications that you think would be valuable for trainers to get?
Well, for personal trainers, I think of the Con Ed I've done, that's probably the only one open to personal trainers. Well, actually, that's true. Kelly Starrett's mobility WOD, movement and mobility, it's called now, 101 and 102. I think that is open to personal trainers. I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
There's a lot to it. I think if I was like a new trainer, I think I'd be overwhelmed by that course, but it's awesome. It completely changed my practice.
Well, I think it's good to be overwhelmed, too, with the
Yeah.
information. And then dissect what's important right now and dissect what you can learn later.
Yeah, those are my two biggest ones, Mike Reynolds and Kelly Starrett's.
Mm-hmm. Learn how to move people and find a trainer who clearly understands movement. If during the assessment if they're not telling you what's going on, like I do this all the time, like I'll watch something happen and they've told me something before, I have lower back pain, and then I see some really bad movement compensation, some mobility restriction. I point that out immediately. I'm like, well, I'm starting to piece together why you have this pain, why you have this knee pain, back pain, whatever the case might be, because that's why I'm doing the tests. I'm doing the tests to figure these things out. If your trainer's not doing that and you're working with this new guy, or you've been working with a guy for a while, guy or girl, just stop working with them.
I feel like the personal training world, you guys like throw shade like crazy. I just feel like a lot of personal trainers like tear each other up. Yeah. Well, okay. I've noticed.
You just talked shit about a physical therapist right before we got started.
Who? I did?
Yeah.
No.
I'm not going to get too specific because it'll be very obvious the more specific we get. But you just talked about it. Older techniques.
Oh, yeah.
Adjunct professor.
Okay, I guess you're right. Guilty as charged. All right, I'm shutting my mouth now.
Yeah, there we go. There we go.
All right, John, are we done? Let's wrap it up.
Yeah, let's be done. I don't want to talk to you anymore.
Later. Do you have unexplained pain? Or do you wonder just how healthy you are? When was the last time you had your blood tested? Blood chemistry analysis is a great way to stay ahead of any health conditions, and now you can have control of your health with Let's Get Checked. Let's Get Checked is an incredible company that sends blood tests to your home. You can choose from over 30 different tests, whether that's liver function, testosterone, micronutrient, cholesterol, or C-reactive protein, which is a marker for inflammation. It's sent to you with free shipping, and you get results in 2 to 5 days, no physician referral needed. Use the code DPT20 for 20% off. Go to letsgetchecked.com and use the code DPT20.